Welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and I love you all nearly and dearly. Thank you very much for listening in. And this episode of the podcast, which is season 8, episode 26. It is flying along this year. Almost halfway through the winter period, very close to it, and repotting well underway. So this episode, surprise, surprise, going to be talking about some planning. I love planning, but planning prior to repotting and what we need to make sure, a bit of a checklist, some considerations, some important stuff that you need to make sure you've got your head around before you start tearing into the trees, which is always the case for me. I always love making sure that I'm fully prepared, fully ready to go. So then when I start getting in that, that working frenzy of doing whatever it is I have to do, I'm very clear and precise and accurate on what I need to do and get it done. Try not to go overboard and do too much, but just do the right amount, the Goldilocks amount, the perfect amount, and then be able to put it away and move on to the next tree. So you can be highly efficient with doing that sort of thing, but it's all about thinking about it first. So I thought, being at the early point in repotting, hopefully you're not too far into the trees just yet. So just some of these considerations to make you sit back, think about things first, and then start tearing into them might be beneficial. And then the other section of the podcast, I'm going to talk about what your plans are after you've repotted, which are just as important as the stuff you're doing beforehand. So it's a bit of a bookend episode where you've got the before and you've got the after. The in-between part we'll talk about somewhere down the track. Don't worry about that. But this is just to get everyone on the same page and hopefully maybe make you sit back, scratch your head, think about things and get things right, because once you lock that tree into the pot, it's quite a long time again before you'll get to get in there and fix it. So let's get into it. Okay, so you're getting ready to repot. It's a very exciting time. I love it. I really do, because it's a chance to check on the root system of the tree, check on the health, make sure everything's going okay, maybe get rewarded if it's a second or third repot for the tree when you've used really nice soil mix, and you've heard all these things about fine feeder roots and how they make a big difference to the future of the tree and the strength of the tree and the growth structure and all that sort of stuff. And then to finally rip the tree out of the pot, have a look at it and go, yeah, I've got one of those root systems, the root ball that I see photos of that people talk about. It's gone from this big, chunky, ugly-looking root ball to something that's really nice and pleasant. And if you haven't got that fine feeder root system developed, then this is your opportunity to take a step in the right direction where you can get that by using the right soil mix, by repotting correctly, by doing all the good stuff that we need to do. You can put that tree on the future path to success, to achieving the goals and targets that you've got set for it. All comes from this process of repotting, which is, it's a bit dorky, but it's very exciting for me. I think this is possibly the most important task that we ever do with our bonsai, because it's the foundation. It's the part that no one really sees, no one gives a stuff about, that you don't look at what's happening below the dirt, but what happens below the soil surface is a direct result of what's going to happen above the soil, and to take your trees to that really high end and get beautiful pad structure and get lovely branching and twiggy fine growth. To get all that all comes from what you're about to do right now with repotting your trees. So with that, I'm not trying to blow this up into something that's not, because I think it is, hand on heart, this is the most important part. But before you get into the repotting and you race into it and go, yeah, I really want to get to that end point, just sit back and have a think about some considerations, some different ideas of what's got to happen with the tree before you just repot it. Because like I said, repotting frequency 2 to 5 years, somewhere in between that range, really, depending on the tree. There's a lot of asterisks and provisos with all of those things, but to get it locked into a pot, even if it's for a really short period of 2 years, and look at that tree every day for 2 years, multiple times, and go, geez, I wish I'd changed that. I really wish that I had done whatever it is that needed to be done beforehand. Now's your chance. Now's your chance to sit back and get that stuff right. So when it is locked in the pot, you go, yes, high five yourself, pat yourself on the back and go, that looks absolutely beautiful. So one of the major considerations that I stew over is if there needs to be an angle change. Does the tree need to change? If there's, my thoughts on anything that's straight or horizontal, vertical or horizontal, I try and avoid it like the plague. So if I can adjust the angle of the trunk, the potting angle, just a little bit, just to avoid that, or maybe to even exaggerate a bend in the trunk or the trunk movement, the lower trunk movement, even more, just with a little slight, just a nudge to the left or a nudge to the right or whatever it is, perfect. But also you've got the adjustment of angles backwards and forwards too. So it's not just the visual left and right. So if your apex, for me, I find sometimes that my apex starts to sit a little bit too far forward on the trees, because that's how I've built them, to have the apex sitting forward of the trunk. So as that apex sort of starts to develop and grow, it's growing in radial fashion, not just left and right, but front and back as well. So I find that sometimes the apex for me can come a little bit too far forward. So when I'm repotting, not just am I looking at that left and right angle change, I'm thinking, should I tilt this tree back just a little bit more and get that? I love it when the lower trunk goes away and then the upper trunk starts to come forward. Avoid the pigeon breast, the beer belly of the tree bulging towards me. So if I can have it where the base of the trunk sort of goes away a little bit and then the top of the trunk comes towards me, that's perfect. So I find that that's something that I consider quite a lot. And if I say, no, the angle's correct, but the apex is still too far forward, then it's a job for me to prune that apex back, to push that back a little bit further than probably what I have in the past. So angle change is a massive one for me. Left, right, front, back, whatever it's going to be. But then throw into the mix also a slight rotation. And this is where having a turntable, whatever it is, something you can spin the tree around on just a little bit. So some timber wedges to adjust that angle left or right, front or back, whatever it is, get that part right first. And then just start toying with the idea of, if you just rotate it, and it can be minor, very, very minor. Like I'm not talking, 90-degree turn with on the turntable to change the viewing angle. I'm talking about just a very minor, 5, 10, 15 degrees, whatever it is. Just does it provide more depth to the design? Maybe one of the lower branches or some of the branching is coming directly towards you. So a rotation around a little bit suddenly takes it from coming into your face to suddenly going around a little bit and pushing more to the left or to the right of the tree, and providing a really nice window to come in and see that trunk line that's in there. So they're the two major ones that I really consider a hell of a lot before I start taking the tree out of the pot. Because if I'm going to adjust that tilt back or tilt left or tilt right or forward or whatever it's going to be, that impacts my root work that I'm going to do. So, for instance, let's say I'm tilting it to the left. The trunk's all going to go to the left. That means the right-hand side of the root ball is suddenly going to be raised up, and the left-hand side of the root ball is going to be pushed down. So I don't just, when I take the tree out of the pot, I can't work the root system equally left and right side. That means the right side on the top area needs a lot more root work, because I've got to bring that area down. And on the left-hand side, the bottom section, the lower section, needs to have a lot more root work than what the top does. I'm still going to break everything up. I'm not just going to leave it like a brick in those areas that aren't being adjusted, and then heavily work the others. But I just need to know that when I do sit that tree on a flat surface, i.e. into a new pot, the mounding that I've got to do to adjust that angle, I want it to be minimal. I really want the root ball itself to be supporting at the new angle that I've chosen. And likewise, if it's rotating, let's say it's rotating slightly around a bit to on a clockwise variant, then the front right corner is going to need to be cut off, and the back left corner is going to need to be cut off to fit into the pot. So they're all considerations that you need to make before you start working that root ball. It's it's destructive and it's a waste of time to work the root ball and then go, right, now I'm going to start changing the angle, because then you'll tilt it and go, actually, I've taken off too much root in that area. When, and suddenly then I'm rotating it around a little bit as well, clockwise a little bit more. Wow, the front of this has got to come off, the front of the back of that section's got to come off as well to fit into the new pot. Suddenly, instead of taking off, let's say 20-25% of the root ball.
We'll be right back.
What do Broadway stars, lawyers, entrepreneurs, educators, and everyday people all have in common? Great stories. I'm Heather Kaplan, and every week on Laugh, Love, Law, we laugh a little, get real, and discover who people are beyond their job title. Real conversations, genuine connections, plenty of laughs. Come join us on Laugh, Love, Law. New episodes every Friday.
Maybe a 30, 35, 40% of the root ball to make it fit, to make it work. And that might still be okay, but it might be one of those things that starts to set the tree back a little bit. So you might not see it straight away. Spring will come around, the tree will start pushing out, getting new growth. Then maybe things don't happen quite as well as what they should. Summer comes along, tree gets cooked in that nice hot weather that we get, and you're suddenly saying to yourself, okay, it's watering, it's this, it's that. No, it could be back from when you repotted the tree and you hadn't had these considerations about angle change and rotation and root work that's going to need to be removed as part of that process or adjusted to make it fit into the pot. So you've got to be really careful, and it doesn't take a hell of a lot of time to get this right, but it's definitely something that you need to have at the front of your mind. So flowing on from that too, again, this is before you've taken the tree out of the pot. This is before you've used your root rake or your root pruning scissors or anything like that. The next consideration you've got is the position in the pot, which is extremely important. So there's a couple of options that we've got, and I'll just run through both scenarios. So you can use the position in the pot to exaggerate or enhance the movement of the tree. All right, so let's say the tree's, I'll just give you an example. Let's say it's flowing up to the left-hand side, coming back to the right-hand side, and there's a nice, beautiful branch on the right-hand side. So it's indicating the tree's moving to the left, flowing back to the right, and then coming down to the key branch. So it's the tree's moving to the right-hand side. What you can do is, if you position that tree slightly to the left of center, it's gonna help balance the pot to the foliage of the tree and enhance that movement back to the right-hand side. If it's a super strong movement to the right-hand side, you can really push that tree over to the left-hand side and really exaggerate that movement back to the right-hand side. So ignore the horticultural side of things for now. Just think about the movement of the tree. So you can use the position in the pot to help tell the story of the movement and flow of the tree. The other option you've got is you could make it static or non-directional. So you could have it where ignore anything above the nabari of the tree, and you can take that tree and you can position it in the center of the pot. All right. So then the tree's got to do its own story, got to tell its own flow. But you can have either the static, non-directional position in the pot, or you can have a movement influenced position in the pot. Easy, two choices, simple, no worries. Like I said, it can be a mild movement based on the mild flow of the tree, or it can be an exaggerated movement positioning where you really push it one side or the other. So now, the most important part, the horticultural part. For me, the static positioning provides equal available space for those roots of the tree to grow. Perfect, great, awesome, brilliant. Doesn't take into account any design side of the bonsai's development, and it might be that when you're moving from say a plastic grow container or something like that, you might have to put it into a static position where it is centered to allow the root ball to grow, and then next repot or repot down the track, when you know you've got those fine feeder roots that are going to make such a big difference to the tree, then you can start saying, okay, now I'm going to shuffle it across to one side. So it's not something that you have to do immediately. And if you do decide to go for the option where it's that extreme movement influenced positioning in the pot, the side that the tree's jammed up against is really going to struggle with growing roots. So those roots are going to hit that pot, start to wrap around, grow into the other side of the pot. And the side that's got plenty of room will be pushing out growth, roots left, right, and centre onto that area and going rampant. So you may find that positioning in the pot is one of those things that, knowing that if you are going to start moving it left or right, or you're going to go for that movement enhanced positioning or movement influence positioning in the pot, then, and it's going to go from a static position where the roots are equally grown left and right of the nabari, the base of the tree, then you need to factor that in with the root work that you're going to be doing. So maybe, let's say it's shuffling to the left for a visual thing. If it's going to the left, then it means that left side of the root ball will be pruned back harder than the right side. So taking that into account, rather than just doing an equal removal of roots right the way around the entire root system, you might leave the right-hand side alone and just rake it out a little bit more, knowing that you're taking more off that left-hand side to enhance the position. Where it may, just using some numbers, you might be taking 30-40% of the left-hand side of the root system out to accommodate that move. So therefore you'd leave 100% of the roots on the right side, or maybe take 10% off, something like that. So you're factoring in one thing to the other to make sure that you're always going to have enough root system there to be able to support the tree, because that's the key to all this. That's why this sitting back, thinking about things now, you can't just do things from a design point of view without taking into account the serious nature of the horticultural side of what we're about to do. And that root system, the tree's engine, needs to be able to support the foliage mass and to develop it and to grow it and to make it go from where it is now to where you want it to go tomorrow. And the removal of too much of the root system just to make the tree look a certain way or get a certain feel, it's the wrong approach. So sitting back and thinking about the positioning in the pot, the rotation, the angle change, it's all going to affect how you're working that root system to make sure that you're not doing damage to it to the point that it can't support the tree. Because if the root system can't support the top part of the tree, things start going wrong. And it might be that you start seeing more of a pest issue come around springtime. It could be that there's issues with transpiration, so therefore summer becomes a real problem for the tree because the tree's root system just can't catch up based on what's happened to it in the short period of time that it's going to need to work, to do its job before it starts taking effect. The other thing you've got to consider also is the pot choice. Is there a better pot or a container that could be used on this tree? Because if that's the case and you're adjusting the size of the container, then that definitely has an impact on how you're going to be working the root system. Just again, let's throw some dumb mass around. If you're going from an 80 centimetre pot back to a 40 centimetre pot, there's a massive reduction in the available root system that you've got to remove off that tree in one sitting, which you're going to need to make sure that tree can handle that sort of move. So doing things purely from a design point of view, as opposed to the horticultural consideration at this time, can have serious impacts, like years and years and years of recovery time that might be needed. So while you might be saying, yeah, I've bought this pot, it looks great, I hold it in front of it, looks fantastic, this is the one that I want, that could be a next time pot. So just don't jump in boots and all too early until you've made sure that you've got enough of the boxes checked to say, yes, it can handle this. Yes, it's going to take a step forward. Yes, it's the right thing to do for the tree. No, I'm not considering myself more than the tree at this point in time. Just, and I'm not saying that you don't aim for these things and you don't get to them, because there's nothing I love more than a small pot on the tree. Really getting the tree strong and healthy so it can thrive and survive in that sort of environment. That's bonsai for me. But it's a process. And looking at photos online or seeing people's trees, seeing my trees in the social media, you might go, wow, that's a really small pot for such a big tree. I'm going to do that as well. That's not the right thing to do. It's aim to get to your tree to that point, but it's a process. And I can guarantee you, from my point of view, I've never jumped from a super large pot to a super small pot without paying the price. I've done it. Of course I've done it, but it's that tree suddenly gets set back. I kick myself and go, shouldn't have done it. I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to talk about it on the podcast. So it hopefully helps other people avoid the pitfalls that I've been through. So, there's some key things there. And the other thing is the materials checklist. Before you start ripping trees out of pots and mucking around with the root system, just have all your ducks lined up. Make sure you've got all your tools. Make sure you've got everything that you need. I'm not going to talk about cleanliness and stuff. I've done that already. Make sure you've got the pot mesh, the tie-in wires. Make sure everything, sphagnum moss for afterwards. You've got your soil mix. You've got everything lined up, ready to go. Then take the tree out. Then do the work on the tree and make sure that, like I said, it's in that pot for 2+ years. Make sure that when you're looking at it for the next couple of years and beyond, that you're looking and go, fantastic, that's exactly what I wanted to achieve. Don't push the tree too hard, but be thorough with it. Again, I'm not saying just, jam it from one massive pot into another massive pot. You've got to be thorough and focus on the fine roots that are going to support the tree, but do things with a purpose, with a plan, and I guarantee you it'll work out a lot better for you. So you've repotted your bonsai. You've got them all ready to go. Now what's your plan? What are you going to do? How do you look after them? And if you've just said, I'm going to put them back out on the bench, wrong answer. Definitely not the case. After repotting, there's a period of time for recovery that the trees are going to need in a really protected environment to make sure that they don't slip backwards any further. Now, you should have tied the trees in really, really thoroughly, really firmly, so there is absolutely zero movement. So you can almost pick up the tree by the trunk, give it a bit of a wiggle, and it's not going to move around. If it moves when you do that process, that test, then you're going to need to rethink things, because there can be zero movement between the tree and the pot if you're going to expect those fine roots to grow without being damaged. You would have seen, I'd assume, when you repot the trees, that there might be some nice fat white roots in there, the new ones that are growing around the edge of the trees. The tree starts to wake up and starts to push these new roots out. And if you've touched those, you'll see how delicate they are and how easily they can be damaged and broken. Imagine that when the tree's pushed out all this new growth, it's starting to spend its resources, its bank, and the tree blows in the wind, especially as it starts getting some foliage in early spring and the tree trunk starts to wobble in the pot. The thing that's going to happen is those new roots are going to start to break, which means the tree's then got to muster up more resources to push out new roots to support the foliage mass. And if it keeps moving, it's going to keep breaking these new roots. So making sure the tree's fully tied in is absolutely crucial to this next step of the tree's development. But you need to also consider what happens to those trees for the period post repotting. Where's it going to go? What's the logistics of how this tree is going to grow? Now, they don't need to be put into a sunny position. They don't need to photosynthesize. They don't need to transpire. They don't need to focus on fluids flowing through their system at this early stage. It's just purely about recovery and ensuring that those new roots that come out, that start doing all the work for the tree and start making sure that it can go forward, are allowed to prosper, to grow in an environment where they're not hindered by anything, by heat, by cold, by wind, by anything. They're just in an environment where they're allowed to just chill out and calm down. And if you consider that say it's a deciduous, they've got no foliage, so putting them into a sunny position is really not going to do anything. There's no foliage mass on the tree. And if it's a conifer, if it's an evergreen, then really putting it into a position where it's forced to work, the tree's forced to do its job, but the root system's not repaired and ready to go from the repotting process, the damage that's been caused with pruning and adjusting it and tying it back into the pot. If the tree's in a position where that's not allowed to repair and you're saying, no, get back out there and do some work, then the tree's going to struggle. So really you want to put it into an environment where there's no sun, no direct sunlight, and keeping them out of the wind is a perfect situation. So for me, I'm very lucky. I've got a big workshop with some nice big benches, and I can set up some plastic tables in there, and I can just put the trees in there and go, there you go, trees. You've got plenty of time now. Just take time, catch your breath, get your system repaired, get things back up and going again, and then move. Then I'll start moving you out into the environment that you've come from. So for me, that period is generally 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, something like that for the trees, depending on a few key telltales that I use. But I have that environment where I can put them. They're safe. They're out of all the elements. I've got a curtain that if I feel that the sun's coming in too hot, too heavy, the room's getting too hot, I can shut some curtains down, cool it down a little bit for them. If it's cold and I want a bit more warmth in the room, I can open the curtains up. It's an environment where I can control everything, and I'm super lucky because it's got a nice concrete floor. It's not carpeted. It's nothing special. So when I water the trees, which is a serious consideration you've got to have, wherever you put your trees, you've still got to be able to water them, which means there's going to be excess water, which is going to get onto the floor, into wherever it is that those trees are being kept. So if you put them in a garage or a shed or your lounge room or the laundry or whatever it is, you've got to make sure that it can handle the water runoff that's going to happen during this period. And there's not going to be a hell of a lot of watering, especially initially. But as the trees build up, as that engine starts going, as they start coming out of dormancy fully, as they start pushing these new roots, as the buds start to open and leaves start to appear and growth starts to happen around the place, then they're going to start taking up more water. And it's that continual taking up water, which is one of my triggers to say, okay, now things are working. Now your engine's working. You're able to do your job. Okay, now I'm going to start putting you into a semi-shaded position in the yard. Then when I'm absolutely certain there's no frost, there's no cold weather, and the tree's really working thoroughly, and I'm almost at the point where I'm needing to water every day, then I'll take the tree and go, right, now you can go back into your usual position because you're ready for it. You've overcome the trauma is a strong word, but the trauma of what I've done to you, and you're bouncing back, you're recovering. So I can then say, all right, you're back on the path. All right, let's put you back out where you need to be. Simple. So the great telltale that I use for all of this, you can use moisture meters, but it's very difficult to get an accurate reading at all with an open mix. The pumice scoria and pine nuggets that I use, using a probe in there, it's very rare that I'll get a reading that's accurate within the first couple of months before the root system starts to hold everything together. So I use chopped up sphagnum moss, very fine, put through a sieve, not like powder, bit bigger than powder, but that goes onto the soil surface. When it's wet, it goes an orangey colour, darker colour. As the tree starts to take up the moisture, as the moisture starts to leave the pot, it starts to lighten and go to a whiter colour. And so you can feel it. It physically starts to dry out. So then I'll water it again. And I'll keep a note saying, all right, that tree over there, that's on a 4-day watering cycle after repotting. Like there's nothing happening. It's staying wet for such a long time. And then no matter whether it's in the sun or not, you'll start to notice that things start to dry out and you go, okay, it's 3 days now. It's starting to speed up a little bit. Next time you water it, it's still 3 days, or it's still quite slow. And then you suddenly go, bang, it's every 2 days. And then it suddenly gets to be every day. It's like, okay, now I'm starting to see a pattern of this tree starting to take up the fluids that are being put in there. Right, now it's time to consider, when does this tree move out into an environment where it's protected, sheltered, but can still start to get into the real world where it needs to start to do its thing, to become a tree again and start to live in the environment where it's going to be kept. I don't want to shelter it. I don't want to protect it forever. I don't want it to be, an indoor pot plant. I want it to be a tree, a bonsai that grows in my yard. So that's my process. And generally for me, as I said, it's between a 2 to 4 week period that they go through this process. So you need to really have in mind for you, what's your plan? once you've repotted these trees, what are you going to do? And if you've got a few trees, it's an easy thing to consider. If you've got hundreds, it's okay. Well, I don't have an area to put hundreds of trees that I'm going to be repotting. Then it might be something along the lines of, if you can't get them into a garden shed or a garage or a workshop, whatever it is, then maybe they go under the benches. If you've got benches that you've built, put a couple of slabs of wood underneath or some bricks or something like that. Don't let them sit directly on the ground, but put them under the benches. They'll be protected from any frost that come. They'll be protected from the wind. Very little access to the sun under those areas as well, and just give them time to recuperate. You know, it might be that they're under a deck or on a pergola or something like that. They're as far out of the elements as you can possibly put them. That's the ideal scenario for your trees. But like I said, you know, if you're going to put them in your lounge room, how are you going to water the things? You know, it's good. It's a process that you need to get your head around before you start ripping into your trees to check off to say, okay, I'm prepared. You know, it's like having your tools nice and sharp. This post repotting is one of the most important, crucial parts of the whole process that you've got to get right. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for it. You've got everything right, and you know what you're going to do, and that the trees can. It's like going into hospital for a while. You know, they've had surgery, they've had the work done to them. Now they just need some time to recuperate. Don't worry about getting into the elements. It's not going to make a lick of difference. So just leave them alone. And then once they start taking those steps forward, it's like now you can move them back. Don't rush them back onto the bench as soon as they've been repotted, because that's when things can start to go wrong. And you know, I talk about 1%ers. This is more than that. This is serious. This is where they need to be allowed to rebuild their engine, their root system, do it in their own time, in their own pace, and then get reintroduced to the elements where that engine can do the job that you expect it to do. Well, I hope your repotting is going well. If you haven't started, you've got time to plan and prepare for everything. If you're listening in the northern hemisphere, then I'm sorry, but it looks like your summer is getting closer and closer to the closure, which means that ours is getting closer and closer to starting, which is great. So no, if you haven't started repotting, then prepare. If you have started repotting, hopefully some of this stuff can ring true to you and maybe make the process a little easier for you and more satisfying, especially that first section where I talked about the before repotting, the changing the angles. That for me really makes such a big difference. You know, I've got pots on the bench that I look at that have been slightly turned around so they're not in the right position in the pot for a long time now, and I know that I can fix that. I can correct it now finally after, maybe 12 months of looking at a tree sitting funny on the bench or on the podium because I like that angle of, and finally getting into the right spot means that when I can, I'm going to be far happier, but also knowing that the root system is going to be worked appropriately. I'm not just going to start ripping stuff off, then consider it and then start taking off more than what I should. So the trees will continue to go forward. Anyway, thanks for listening in. I love it. Love the support. Please reach out if I can help with anything. As always, those that have been, I hope I've helped. I hope I've made your bonsai journey that little bit better. So I do love the support and contact and the smallness, the micro element that bonsai has for the world. It makes the world feel like a lovely place. So thanks for listening in. As always, until next time, happy bonsai.